Well, even I did not expect this from the 49ers. Their two longest tenured players appear to be recruiting Deebo Samuel, at least for a tryout during training camp. Meanwhile, Brandon Aiyuk continues his posting sprees. One post stood out to me. I know that I like to stay away from these because they've become so irrational, but one seemed that Brandon Ayuk might be revealing new information if he is being truthful, which is also in question. But look at this. Speaking of Kyle Shanahan, very obviously, coach, want me to come back so I can draw all the coverage and make it easy for the guys that remind him of himself back in his heyday. First off, this is what Kyle Shanahan looked like in his heyday, as alleged by Brandon Aiyuk, wide receiver at the University of Texas. The reason that this post stuck out to me on Instagram is because Brandon Aiyuk seems to be talking in the present tense. Coach want me to come back. So I'm assuming he means coach wants me to come back. The rest of it I understand from a football perspective, so I can draw all the coverage as an ex-receiver. Yeah, the 49ers wanted Ayuk to come back last year. Obviously, he didn't. He abandoned the team. What if what Brandon Ayuk is saying here, though, has some legs? What if the 49ers, concerned about Ayuk, and, we saw Steve Young talking at the American Century Championship, the golf tournament, about this concern that stretches beyond football.
I worry for him. I feel like I want to reach out and help. This is beyond football. It feels like we need to not make it about football right now.
What if the 49ers have seen this going off the rails for Brandon Ayuk? And what if Kyle Shanahan, more than just a football coach, what if Kyle Shanahan as a human decided to reach out to Brandon Ayuk to try to save him from this obviously very self-destructive course? And what if he called him and said, hey, just come into the building? Maybe the 49ers think that they can help save Brandon Ayuk from himself at this point. Obviously, if that did happen, Brandon Ayuk is scoffing at it because he manages to insult Kyle Shanahan in this post. Also managed to potentially insult Ricky Pearsall with this post. And in another one, posted within minutes of the first that I showed you, it appears there might even be a shot at Christian McCaffrey when Brandon Ayuk mentions not fumbling away a chance to win a Super Bowl. So still ugly stuff, but the present tense, or at least the supposed present tense of this post from Brandon Ayuk, makes me wonder, this has, and I've repeated this several times as we've discussed this situation, I think this has now gotten bigger than football for Brandon Ayuk, and I think there is a lot of concern for his well-being, and it actually would reflect, I think, really well on Kyle Shanahan if the 49ers left football contract stuff at the door and just reached out to Brandon Ayuk and tried to help him in other ways. And maybe they did so by appealing to his ego. They said, hey, we could use you back. We can need you back, even though they probably really don't. Mike Evans is an upgrade over Brandon Ayuk at the X receiver. When you talk about gravity, Ayuk obviously exerted a lot of that on the field, and he did help his team big time, especially in 2023 when they had that record-setting offense. The X receiver position is so important so the rest of the offense can function. They've missed having that X the past 2 seasons, but now they have that X again in Mike Evans. Now they've got Dejon Stribling. They have Christian Kirk. They have Ricky Pearsall. So even if Brandon Ayuk is burning every single bridge and managing to insult teammates on the way out, the 49ers are a lot better in that receiver room than they had been in the past. But just worth chewing on. We've heard Ayuk allege that John Lynch visited his house. I'm guessing that was back in the fall when Ayuk was in the Bay Area, and Ayuk made it sound like that was creepy. I think that anybody looking at the situation rationally would say that John Lynch was courageous and caring in that situation, checking in on somebody who had been such an important part of the team for half a decade, for such a long time. And that's example of a GM who cares, right? If that story is indeed true from Brandon Aiyuk. And I'm not sure what to make of this from Brandon Aiyuk, but if Kyle Shanahan has indeed reached out, it could be an example of a head coach who does care. Switching gears, and this is related because we have been talking about Christian McCaffrey and Ricky Pearsall. Well, we've got a workout content dump from both of these 49ers offensive players. McCaffrey doing some work in the water. This is not a response to Brandon Aiyuk because it was posted, I believe, before Brandon Ayuk's Instagram spree. McCaffrey working out in Southern California. You could see he's on the UCLA practice field doing what looks to be some breathing mindfulness work. Remember, he's like Bruce Lee, wants to move like water, and obviously doing a lot of strength work as well. So Christian McCaffrey putting in good work, and Ricky Pearsall, who recently attended a couple of youth football camps in the Central Valley in California, he posted a video working in Fort Lauderdale in Florida. Just days from now, all of these guys will convene in the Bay Area. 49ers rookies have already reported. That was yesterday. And yes, San Francisco did make the signing that I predicted. Jack Bouwmeester, the punter, is now officially a member of the 49ers. There were some visa issues. Bouwmeester is Australian, so the 49ers could not officially sign the Texas product, just like Kyle Shanahan, coming out of college as an undrafted free agent. But the visa finally processed. The 49ers cut Zack Thomas, an offensive lineman, to make room for Bouwmeester to sign on the first day of rookie training camp. So Bouwmeester is a right-footed punter. Did a good job in college, which is why the 49ers wanted him. And they've got a left-footed punter, a free agent addition, Corliss Waitman. Those two guys are going to battle it out to replace Thomas Morstead. Bouwmeester being Australian is interesting. I'm sure the league office wouldn't mind having him on the roster for the 49ers when San Francisco opens the season in Melbourne, Australia. But for the time being, the 49ers are trying to find who their returner is going to be, and the ball comes off the foot of a left-footed punter differently than it does a right-footed punter, so this is going to be really big for the training camp competition at punt returner, and the 49ers will find who the best punter is between Bouwmeester and Corliss Waitman. Also, to open up training camp for rookies, the 49ers, as everybody went through their physicals, placed the rookie tight end Khalil Dinkins out of Penn State on the non-football injury list, NFI. That means that Dinkins came in and the physical diagnosed some sort of injury. Maybe the 49ers already knew about it before, but they didn't have to make a move until he actually came into the building. But NFI is for players who got hurt away from the professional team facility. So sometimes guys have pre-existing injuries they suffered in college, they go on NFI. Guys who got hurt at an NFL facility or at an NFL game, they go on PUP, physically unable to perform. Functionally, the two lists operate in the same way. Dinkins, though, did participate in OTAs. So it seems that something happened over the course of the workouts period between OTAs and this rookie training camp report. So for the time being, a roster spot is opened up as he goes to that NFI list, and the 49ers do have one spot open. They can take him off of it at any time. We're obviously very curious about Khalil Dinkins because he played behind Tyler Warren at Penn State, and I think that's why he flew under the radar. Didn't have as many catches, but 49ers believe this is a capable tight end. I think they gave him $280,000 guaranteed, and they might be a little bit thin at tight end this year, given the fact that George Kittle is recovering from that Achilles injury. So they can remove him from NFI at any time if the injury is minor. I don't know the extent of it at this point. We will find out hopefully very soon, probably at the latest next Saturday, the 25th, when the 49ers veterans report for camp and Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch hold their first press conference. Speaking of George Kittle and Kyle Juszczyk, the tight end position, Juszczyk took more snaps last year as a tight end than he did as a fullback. This is Deebo Samuel is still without a team. Turned 30 years old in January, obviously played last season with Washington after the 49ers traded him away. Contract expired for Deebo, and he's posting now like a man who doesn't yet have a team, less than a week before training camp starts in the NFL. And it just so happens that Kyle Juszczyk, the longest tenured 49er, joined the team in 2017, followed by George Kittle, the second longest tenured 49er, joined Kyle Juszczyk on the team about a month and a half later. Have both replied with the similar message. I have a guest house with your name on it, Kyle Juszczyk says, and George Kittle says, I also have a guest house labeled Deebo's second home. Now, they could just be reaching out to an old friend, offering him some support, but this does seem oddly specific. Both have guest houses in the Bay Area. Deebo Samuel would only need a guest house if there were a rather temporary stay, at least initially planned. And that could be an invite to the 49ers 90-man roster during training camp. That obviously would be a very low-risk proposition by the 49ers. And listen, people always try to look at this as a jigsaw puzzle and say, well, there's no room. There's no room for another puzzle piece. People act like injuries are turned off in a video game. Last year, the 49ers were running out of receivers by the end of training camp, and they entered Seattle, and somehow, and I think the somehow is Brock Purdy, but they beat the Seahawks, a historically good defense in week one, really without any plus receiving production at the X spot. They had Pearsall, which was big in that game at Z. Other positions, though, really struggled in that game against the Seattle Seahawks to open the season. Even Jawan Jennings, I think, was not at 100%, and the 49ers got it done. But they certainly wish they would have had more receiving firepower last year, more depth last year. So if you can bring in a Deebo Samuel on a non-guaranteed minimum contract, which might be possible if he isn't with a team yet, if he can try out for your team over the course of training camp, I don't think that you say no. Now, Deebo Samuel might be better off waiting to see how injury situations unfold around the league. Then he can join a team in week 2, week 3. Remember what Kendrick Bourne did last year, joined the 49ers early in the season, I think for the Saints game. That was his first game for San Francisco. So this is just talk for now, but it's interesting talk because, again, the two stars who have been with this 49ers team the longest have both, and they know what they're doing. They've both publicly gone out and said, you've got a guest house in the Bay Area, Deebo, if that is indeed something that you end up needing. I don't know how Shanahan, Lynch, and the 49ers front office is thinking, but I will say that I am certain that it wouldn't be a high commitment to Deebo Samuel. And if there's something that is a low commitment option, maybe, just maybe, the 49ers make training camp even more interesting. Speaking of that wide receiver room, night and day, right? It looks completely different than it has over the past couple of seasons. I mean, Mike Evans himself is there. If you have that X receiver position taken care of in this offense, I think everything else can flow, which, funny enough, that's what Brandon Aiyuk was insinuating in his post, saying that X has to draw some of the coverage so other guys can get open. I mean, that's the whole point of how the X operates in Shanahan's system. Also, the X has to block, and that sets up the run game, and the run game can feed the pass game, and everything is connected. But they've got Evans now. They've got Stribling now. Stribling replaces Jennings, but may also be able to replace Evans and, by extension, Brandon Aiyuk. You want to keep Ricky Pearsall at that Z receiver position. I think you love him at the flanker spot. And then Christian Kirk is a player who can play at the Z or the F. I think he could play a small slot, but he can also play a flanker position given his speed. Jordan Watkins, Jacob Cowing, other young players on this team who have yet to firmly prove themselves but have an opportunity to do so this offseason. You gladly welcome them into that room because, again, you don't know when guys are going to get hurt, when you're going to need to fill in at a very important position. Receiver was very, very limited for the 49ers last year. The fact that they still had a top 6 efficiency offense, despite the fact that they weren't getting open at receiver. I mean, you saw the full limitations of it by the time that they hit a wall against Seattle, because even Pearsall was playing fully compromised in that game. Obviously, they didn't have an X, and I mean, it was ugly at the end, especially when they played a really, really good defense. They could not get that separation. So the fact that they still finished as a top 6 efficiency offense, credit to Shanahan, credit to Purdy, credit to McCaffrey, credit to the guys who strained with so little opening to make it work. This year, the 49ers hope that they can just blast some space off the field, right? Because they do have the horses at the receiver position that they didn't in the past, which is why people should be excited about Ricky Pearsall working, why people should be excited about Mike Evans on this football team, why people should be excited about Camp Purdy, which happened here in the Nashville area. By the way, had maybe the best burger that I've ever had. I know it took me a little while to get to it here, but we went to Momotaro. I guess it's a Chicago-based restaurant, and they opened up an outpost in Nashville, and this was insane. It's like a sushi place, but they had the best burger that I've ever had. We're going to go to Japan, maybe over the bye week this season. And I've heard that Japan obviously ruins Japanese food for you. You're never going to have sushi as good as you'll get in Japan. But I heard that it also ruins every type of food for you, including burgers, pizza, because they just make everything better than they do in the U.S. Well, this burger was insane. It even had like an Asian bun, which some kind of fried action going on. It was spectacular. So they assembled a good burger at Momotaro, and the 49ers are trying to assemble the best team possible. Training camp is underway. Rookies getting acclimated this week. It is more of an orientation week for rookies. Physicals obviously happened yesterday. One open roster spot for the 49ers. We'll see who they use it on because Khalil Dinkins has been placed on NFI. And all that drama with Brandon Aiyuk and maybe even some with Deebo Samuel now with Kyle Juszczyk and George Kittle posting. I'm sure it will resolve itself at some point, but the 49ers on July 25th will see their veterans report. Expect this week for some players to go on PUP as they arrive at the facility and undergo physicals. You know, there's guys with pre-existing injuries like Nick Bosa, Michael Williams, George Kittle. Maybe Bosa doesn't go on PUP at all. Maybe he's fully ready to go. I don't know, but expect some guys to go on PUP this week. Do not freak out about it. It is par for the course as guys show up. If they are rehabbing from pre-existing injuries, the team is essentially required to put them on that PUP list. So busy times ahead. That's the report. We will see you very, very soon.